Have you ever wondered why your sexual desire feels like a mystery you can't control? One moment, it's alive and burning through every thought. The next, it vanishes into silence. You might even feel guilty or confused, wondering what's wrong with you. But what if your desire isn't broken at all? What if it's trying to tell you something far deeper than the body, something your soul has been whispering all along? In today's video, we will explore a truth most people never dare to face. Your sexual desire is not merely biological, it is spiritual, a direct reflection of your inner world. Drawing from Carl Jung's profound insight, we'll uncover how what you crave reveals what you've repressed, how the fantasies that haunt or excite you are messages from your unconscious, and how the intensity or absence of desire mirrors your emotional state. You'll learn why desire disappears when you're most vulnerable, why certain people magnetize you, and why emptiness sometimes follows moments of pleasure. By the end of this reflection, you will no longer see your sexuality as something random or shameful. You will begin to understand it as sacred communication, the language your soul uses to guide you toward healing and wholeness. When you learn to interpret this language, you'll realize that every pulse of desire, every silence of longing, is an invitation to deeper self-awareness. Today, we are not just talking about desire, we are decoding the soul's hidden mirror within it. So stay until the end, because what you'll discover may change the way you see not only your sexuality, but your entire inner world. Number 1. When desire vanishes. There comes a moment that quietly unsettles even the strongest among us, when desire doesn't simply fade, but disappears without warning. One day you feel alive, curious, and connected to your body. The next, everything goes silent. The warmth, the pulse, the hunger gone. It's as if something deep within has pulled the plug on your life force. Yet according to Carl Jung, libido is not merely sexual energy. It is the very current of life itself. So when desire vanishes, it isn't a failure of your biology. It's a message from your soul, pulling the emergency brake to protect you from a deeper misalignment. Think back to the last time your desire collapsed completely. What else was happening in your life then? Were you drained by a job that consumed your joy, trapped in a relationship where you felt unseen, or living a version of yourself that didn't feel authentic? The loss of desire often emerges not from a physical issue, but from emotional and spiritual exhaustion, a quiet plea from your psyche saying, "Stop. This path is suffocating something essential inside you." Most people panic in this silence. They look for quick fixes, a supplement, a therapist, a distraction, or even a new partner, hoping to reignite what feels extinguished. But the truth is rarely found in the body alone. Desire is a spiritual compass, and when it vanishes, it is pointing to something far deeper. Jung observed that people who lost their libido were often living lives that appeared successful from the outside, but felt hollow within. They were performing identities that didn't match their inner truth, making choices that pleased others but betrayed themselves. In such cases, the unconscious steps in with a kind of radical mercy. It says, "If you won't listen to what you truly want, I will take away the ability to want at all." This is not punishment, it is protection. The psyche withdraws desire to prevent further damage, forcing you to confront the reality that something vital in your life has gone missing. Sexual desire is deeply intertwined with aliveness. It thrives on purpose, curiosity, creativity, and truth. When those inner fires are ignored, desire suffocates, because authenticity is the oxygen it breathes. You can't feel passion for life while denying the very parts of yourself that make you feel alive. So before you label your loss of desire as failure, see it as guidance. It may be your soul's way of asking for freedom from the job that depletes you, the relationship that diminishes you, or the identity that no longer fits. The moment you begin to honor what truly lights you up, something miraculous happens. Desire returns. Not because you repaired something broken, but because you nourished what was starving. When you feed your soul, your body follows, and the silence of desire transforms into the music of aliveness once again. If you've ever experienced this quiet disappearance of desire, take a moment to reflect. What might your soul have been trying to tell you? Was it exhaustion, disconnection, or a deeper call for authenticity? Sometimes, what feels like loss is actually the beginning of rediscovery. I invite you to pause and share your reflections below. Have you ever noticed your desire fading when your spirit felt out of alignment? Your story might help someone else recognize their own turning point. And if this message resonates with you, simply type, "My desire is my compass," in the comments as a reminder that your longing is not a flaw to fix, but a truth to listen to. Number 2. The shadow hiding in fantasy. When desire returns after a long silence, it rarely does so innocently. It often arrives carrying images so vivid they startle you, scenes that seem random, but are, in truth, encoded messages from the deepest layers of your psyche. These fantasies are not meaningless indulgences, they are communications from what Carl Jung called the shadow, the hidden self that holds everything you have repressed, denied, or disowned. Jung taught that what we reject does not disappear. It retreats underground and begins to speak in a different language through our dreams, our fears, and yes, our sexual fantasies. If you pay attention, you'll notice how often desire reveals what the conscious self refuses to admit. The person who is always composed and in control may fantasize about surrender. The one who lives to please others might imagine dominance, aggression, or taking up forbidden space. These fantasies are not signs of corruption or perversion, they are symbols of balance. The psyche seeks equilibrium, and it uses desire as its most persuasive teacher. What you fantasize about is rarely about the literal act. It is about the energy behind it, the part of you that has been exiled from daily life. To crave submission may not mean you wish to be powerless, but that you are exhausted from carrying the weight of every decision, from always being the responsible one. To crave dominance might not mean cruelty, but a longing to feel your own agency again after years of silence or repression. The fantasy, in this sense, becomes a mirror not of what is wrong with you, but of what is missing. Shame, however, distorts this process. The more you condemn or suppress a fantasy, the stronger it grows in the dark. What is pushed into the unconscious does not dissolve, it concentrates. When you judge your inner world instead of listening to it, you drive those energies deeper into shadow, where they begin to rule you from behind the scenes through compulsion, guilt, or restless longing. The wise approach is not to ask whether a fantasy is normal, but to ask what it is trying to integrate. Which part of you is speaking through it? What forgotten aspect of your vitality, power, or innocence is asking to be seen again? When you dare to meet your shadow with curiosity instead of fear, something extraordinary happens. The compulsive edge of desire begins to soften. The shame loses its grip. You no longer need to act out what you've denied, because you have begun to live it consciously, to let that once banished energy rejoin the whole of who you are. Your fantasies are not enemies to conquer, they are guides leading you home. They show you the exact places where repression has fractured your wholeness. When you stop judging them and start listening, they become sacred teachers. Each image, each longing, is a whisper from your soul saying, "This too is part of you, let me in." Number 3. The emptiness after pleasure. There is a moment that many quietly dread, the hollow drop that follows pleasure. You reach the peak, the desire fulfilled, the moment you thought would bring completion, yet afterward, a strange emptiness creeps in. You feel lonelier, more disconnected, sometimes even numb. The silence after ecstasy becomes louder than the act itself. It is in that silence that something deeper begins to speak. Carl Jung would say that this crash reveals a difficult truth, that sex, for many, has been asked to carry a job it cannot do. We turn it into a painkiller, a temporary anesthetic for the ache of the soul. The longing that drives us toward others is not always physical. Beneath it often lies a hunger that is psychological, spiritual, and existential. When that deeper hunger goes unacknowledged, the body tries to soothe it in the only language it knows: touch, excitement, release. But no amount of pleasure can fill an emptiness that was never physical to begin with. So the cycle repeats. You seek connection to escape the storm within boredom, anxiety, or a heavy sense of meaninglessness. For a brief moment, the mind quiets, the chaos pauses. It feels like peace. But then the silence after returns with greater force, reminding you that the storm was never outside of you. It lived within all along, only muted for a few fleeting seconds. Bodies, no matter how intimately intertwined, cannot heal the wounds of the soul. When sex becomes transactional, a trade for validation, distraction, or a momentary illusion of control, the emptiness deepens. What feels like desire is often the symptom of something else, a starvation of meaning, a thirst for real presence, for purpose, for being seen not just as a body, but as a being. Compulsive desire, then, is not about lust. It is about longing, a spiritual hunger disguised as physical craving. You are not addicted to sex. You are addicted to the brief relief from yourself. The stillness that follows, however, reveals the truth you tried to outrun. In the silence after climax, what you fled always finds you again. The emptiness is not punishment. It is an invitation, a signal that you have been searching for the sacred in places that cannot contain it. Every compulsion, no matter how disguised, is a misdirected spiritual need. Pleasure cannot solve a purpose problem. The soul keeps sending the same message over and over. This is not what I need. Until you listen to that voice, you will continue to chase moments that fade as quickly as they arrive. But when you finally stop running and meet your own hunger with honesty, desire transforms. It no longer devours you, it guides you toward the life your spirit has been yearning to live. Imagine a man named Daniel, who, after years of feeling unfulfilled, begins seeking comfort in a series of passionate encounters. Each time, he believes this will be the one to finally make him feel alive again. For a few fleeting minutes, the intensity makes him forget the dull ache inside the loneliness, the pressure, the quiet fear that his life has lost direction. But as soon as the lights dim and silence settles, the emptiness returns, heavier than before. He starts to notice a pattern. The more he chases physical satisfaction, the more disconnected he feels from his own heart. It isn't that Daniel truly longs for more partners or more pleasure. What he truly craves is connection, not skin to skin, but soul to soul. Beneath his pursuit lies an unacknowledged grief, the feeling that his life has become mechanical, that his achievements have meaning only when reflected through someone else's desire. When he begins to sit with the silence after pleasure, instead of fleeing it, he realizes that what he's been chasing isn't ecstasy, but escape. He has been trying to fill a spiritual void with physical intensity, mistaking relief for renewal. In that moment of recognition, something shifts. The emptiness no longer feels like punishment. It becomes a teacher. It reveals that pleasure was never the enemy, but the messenger showing him where he has abandoned his deeper self. For the first time, he starts to rebuild his sense of intimacy from within, through creativity, reflection, and honest connection with others that doesn't depend on performance or release. The craving loses its compulsive edge because he finally understands what his soul had been whispering all along: this is not what I need. Number 4. Purpose transforms libido. There is a profound and undeniable connection between sexual energy and one's sense of purpose. When a person drifts through life without direction or meaning, their sexual energy often becomes the main stage on which their longing for aliveness plays out. In the absence of purpose, the libido carries the heavy burden of meaning itself, and sexuality becomes not just a desire for connection, but a desperate attempt to feel something real, something that reminds you that you are still alive. The pursuit becomes restless and unfulfilling because what is truly missing is not pleasure, but purpose. When you begin to live with genuine purpose, everything changes. Sexuality does not disappear, it transforms. The frantic search for stimulation softens because you no longer need intensity to compensate for emptiness. You already feel vibrant and connected through what you are creating, building, or serving in your life. Purpose channels your energy into a flow that nourishes the soul. The urgency to seek validation through sex fades because your existence itself begins to feel meaningful. Carl Jung described libido not simply as sexual drive, but as undifferentiated life energy, the raw creative force that animates all human expression. Sex is only one possible outlet for this energy. When purpose enters the picture, this energy diversifies. It flows into art, work, relationships, learning, and acts of compassion. You begin to discover that the same current that fuels desire can also power your creative projects, your ambitions, and your spiritual growth. In environments that drain the soul, oppressive jobs, unfulfilling routines, relationships that lack authenticity, people often oscillate between two extremes, compulsion and collapse. Some become trapped in cycles of obsession, chasing sexual intensity to momentarily feel alive. Others shut down completely, their vitality numbed by meaninglessness. Both extremes are distortions of the same problem, the absence of purpose. When life lacks direction, the psyche either overcompensates through craving or retreats into apathy. True purpose brings balance to this polarity. It does not kill desire, it liberates it. Purpose frees sexuality from desperation, transforming it into an expression of joy rather than a remedy for emptiness. You stop needing sex as proof of aliveness and begin to choose it consciously as one of many ways to experience your life force. In this transformation, desire becomes sacred again, not a means of escape, but a mirror of your vitality. When you live with purpose, your energy no longer begs for meaning, it naturally generates it. You realize that passion and purpose are not separate, they are two expressions of the same soul fire. Purpose turns libido into creativity, compassion, and presence. It is the bridge between the physical and the spiritual, between the longing for pleasure and the longing for meaning. When you align your life with what truly matters, your sexuality becomes not a cry for life but a celebration of it. Number 5. Childhood imprints and adult patterns. The roots of our adult desires run far deeper than we imagine. Long before we ever understood love or attraction, our early experiences began to shape the way we would one day express intimacy. Childhood is the blueprint of emotional learning, and its lessons, both spoken and unspoken, leave imprints that silently guide adult sexuality. These patterns often outlive conscious memory. Even when we forget the details of what happened, the body remembers. If love in your childhood felt conditional, earned only through performance, obedience, or perfection, that pattern often carries into adulthood. You may find yourself performing during intimacy, feeling the need to be impressive, pleasing, or desirable just to be worthy of affection. Or you might be drawn to emotionally withholding partners, unconsciously repeating an old story where love must be chased, not received freely. In these moments, the adult body is acting out the script the child once learned. I must earn love to be loved. If abandonment or emotional neglect marked your early years, the adult you may associate intensity with love. The rush of attraction becomes addictive, a temporary high that fills the old void of being unseen or forgotten. Yet, this surge of passion is often fleeting, because what the heart truly craves is not intensity, but safety. Underneath the surface, the soul longs for secure attachment, a connection that does not need to be chased, proved, or feared. On the other hand, if closeness once meant danger, perhaps love was unpredictable, or vulnerability led to pain. The body may have learned that intimacy is unsafe. Desire might shut down just as emotional closeness begins, or awaken only toward those who remain distant. Unavailable partners can feel strangely safe because distance protects you from the threat of being hurt again. The nervous system, shaped by early fear, mistakes detachment for protection and confusion for love. Trauma is not always what happened often. It is what did not happen. It is the affection that was never given, the emotions that went unacknowledged, the self that was never truly seen. These absences shape desire just as powerfully as overt harm. They leave the psyche reaching for completion, hoping that a partner or sexual experience might finally fill the void left long ago. Until these unconscious patterns are brought into awareness, they repeat themselves. You may find yourself drawn to what hurts, aroused by what contradicts your values, or stuck in cycles where connection fades as soon as it begins. It can feel as though some invisible force keeps pulling you toward the same pain, but that force is simply the past asking to be healed. The true work begins when you start tracing these patterns back to their roots. Ask yourself, when did I first learn this? What was I trying to solve? What did I need but never receive? These questions are not about blame but understanding. They help you separate who you are now from who you had to be then. Healing means teaching the nervous system a new story that intimacy can be safe, that closeness can nourish instead of harm, and that desire can flow without fear. When the adult self gently reclaims leadership from the wounded child, love begins to feel different. The body softens, the heart opens, and connection becomes a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. In this way, sexuality evolves from repetition to revelation. The same energy that once replayed pain becomes a path toward wholeness. When you recognize and transform these early imprints, you are no longer ruled by the past. You are rewriting it through presence, awareness, and love. If you've made it this far, it means you're willing to look beneath the surface, and that's where real transformation begins. Take a moment to reflect on your own patterns. What did love feel like when you were a child? Can you recognize echoes of those early experiences in your relationships today? Awareness is the first act of healing. I invite you to share your reflections in the comments. Your story might help someone else recognize their own. And if this message resonates with your journey, type, "I choose healing over repetition" as your affirmation today, a declaration that you are no longer living from your wounds, but from your wisdom. Number 6. From compulsion to conscious direction. Sexuality is not a problem to be solved, but a profound teacher guiding you toward individuation, the sacred journey of becoming whole. Instead of seeing desire as something to suppress or control, begin to treat it as a message, a living current that reveals the state of your soul. Every impulse carries information if you're willing to listen. When desire surges, pause and ask, what am I truly hungry for? Is it connection, power, aliveness, or perhaps escape from something I'd rather not feel? This shift from reaction to reflection transforms your relationship with your own energy. Awareness is the bridge. Notice when desire intensifies. Does it spike when you're avoiding meaningful work, or when you feel unseen or powerless? Does it fade when you're aligned with your truth? Even the fantasies that arise can become mirrors, revealing the unmet needs or repressed aspects of yourself, calling for attention. When you begin to trace the deeper rhythm beneath each impulse, patterns emerge. The longing for intimacy disguised as lust, the craving for freedom masked as rebellion, the ache for creativity buried beneath routine. Then comes the redirection. Instead of feeding the surface craving, meet the real need underneath. If you crave connection, cultivate authentic closeness rather than chasing momentary contact. If you feel powerless, reclaim your agency by acting with integrity and intention. If you seek vitality, engage in passions that genuinely awaken you, creative expression, meaningful work, or service that lights your inner fire. When you answer the soul's deeper hunger, the compulsive drive begins to dissolve on its own. Acting from consciousness rather than compulsion changes everything. Sexual energy no longer drags you into patterns of seeking. It becomes a radiant overflow of alignment. You stop grasping for aliveness because you are already alive, already connected to the greater flow of purpose moving through you. Those who do this inner work discover something paradoxical yet liberating. As sexuality becomes integrated rather than idolized, it grows richer, more fulfilling, yet less consuming. Energy that was once trapped in obsession now finds multiple channels: creativity, love, contribution, play, and devotion. Desire loses its desperation and becomes devotion itself, a sacred reminder that every pulse of longing is not just about pleasure, but about life asking to be lived more consciously through you. Most people spend their lives being driven by unconscious desire, endlessly blaming partners, circumstances, or biology, while the deeper truth remains unseen, that the real issue is not the desire itself, but the lack of awareness behind it. Yet, there is another way. You can begin to listen, to treat every longing, every fantasy, every wave of emptiness or compulsion, not as something to suppress or fix, but as a message from within. These impulses are not enemies. They are breadcrumbs leading you back to your authentic self, to the parts of you that have been waiting to be acknowledged, loved, and integrated. This journey requires courage. It asks for radical honesty to look at your patterns without defense, to name your wounds without shame, and to face the shadow without fear. It is about closing the distance between who you truly are and who you pretend to be. On the other side of that confrontation lies something sacred, a sexuality no longer fragmented, but whole, desire no longer grasping, but guiding, pleasure that flows from alignment rather than from escape. When you integrate your desire with your consciousness, it becomes a compass instead of a craving. It serves your growth, deepens your intimacy, and expands your aliveness in ways you never imagined. True satisfaction doesn't come from chasing intensity, but from inhabiting your wholeness. Your sexual desire has always been a mirror of your soul, whispering, calling, waiting for you to listen. The question now is, are you ready to hear what it has been trying to say all along? If this message spoke to you, leave a comment below with the affirmation, "I am ready to listen to my soul through my desire." Share your reflections. What truth have you discovered about yourself through desire? Your words might inspire someone who is still afraid to look within. And if this video resonated with your heart, please give it a like. Share it with someone who needs this reminder. And don't forget to subscribe for more reflections on consciousness, healing, and the sacred language of the soul. Watch the next video below, because your journey toward wholeness has only just begun.